Let's talk security now. We've talked energy security, but let's talk about the bigger security. And we have joining us on the program this morning, Mr. Dixon Osaje, who's the Managing Director at Breeze Protection Services, a security analyst, is right here with us in our Lagos studio. And joining us via Zoom, Mr. Abe Agiole, who's a former Commissioner of Police, Kaduna State, joins us via Zoom, as I said. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Well, I know there's a lot of conversation around state police now. States have been given deadline to submit their proposals. Let's get this done once and for all. Looks like that's what government is saying, but I would like to get your thoughts on this, Mr. Osaje. You were in the military, and there's been this report about the resignation of almost 200 soldiers from the military. Yes, the army has spoken about this, saying they are free to resign. This is not an issue and all of that. But you were in the military. I don't know if you resigned voluntarily or you just had to focus. But what is the modus operandi, and how does this usually hit the military, essentially?
Well, for me, I think that shouldn't be something new because I voluntarily disengaged 2003 during the time of General Martin Luther Agwai. My voluntary discharge was approved. That was 21 years ago. And I didn't have any issues about that. And I think then the state of insecurity in Nigeria was not this bad, you know. And my commander was asking, why are you leaving? We have a motive to go for some engagement overseas. But now we've seen a lot of soldiers disengaging from service. Most people might think they are highly demotivated, or perhaps they are afraid to engage terrorists, or perhaps they are tired. But one thing we need to understand, or the public needs to understand, is that the military service is voluntary. And during enlistment, they let you know that it is a voluntary service. No one is forced into the military, and no one can be forced to remain in the military. Because when you force people to remain in service, then you are putting yourself and your operational capability at risk, because one or two persons might want to sabotage your effort if you don't let them go. So the military should let them go, and you know, soldier go, soldier come. That is the balance, you know, in every given time. So I think those who have put in resignation, perhaps they know the reason why. I don't know. Some might. Sometimes there are medical discharge. You know, for example, you have been injured in the battlefield, or you have, you know, some mental issues or psychological issues. The military will let you go instead of them to suffer any operational error. So it's not an issue at all.
Well, the statement that has been put out is titled "Approval for Voluntary/Medical Discharge Soldiers," and then puts the number at 196. That is a lot. I mean, 2, 3, 4, but almost 200. Doesn't that raise a red flag? And you talk about the security situation then and now. Some have alluded this to the kind of equipment these people get, motivation, remuneration, you know, and all of that. Do you think that it's a coincidence to have this much, and it's something we need to dig deeper, or just let it fly as, okay, this happens, let's move on?
I remember my time when the signal came and I saw the discharge list. I think we were about 167. That was in 2003. Budging both medical discharge and also voluntary or honorably discharged. I came out honorably. You can see I'm not I'm medically fit. So if you talk about these numbers, I think the Nigerian army or the Nigerian military or the government is investing a lot in training, area of training. You can't train a soldier for this long and you have them in numbers going. What is the problem? They need to look at the underlying factors. What is the reason why they are leaving service? Is it in the area of motivations? For me, I think the number of soldiers leaving service now, that list you saw, that signal you saw, perhaps that is in media space, could be first batch of 2024. Maybe we've not seen second batch.
So there will be more, or maybe more.
There's possibility for us to have first, second, or third batch of voluntary discharge in 2024. But for the purpose of motivation, I think those guys that are putting for resignation know the reason why they are leaving, and the army honorably allowed them to go. So it's not a cause for alarm. All
right, let's take this to Mr. Abe. Maybe shifting attention to the issue of state police, which has been a conversation for a while. There's been that advocacy from state governors and some people saying, look, we need to decentralize the issue of policing and security in general to be able to be efficient and effective. In fact, the patriots were advocating for a new constitution, where they call the constitution of the people, calling for constituent assembly. They believe that focusing all of the attention on the center is part of the reason. And the other day, the NEC It actually said about 4 states have not submitted their report, and today is the deadline for them to submit their report for the establishment of state police so that the conversation can proceed to the next level. When you hear some of this progress being made in terms of the push for state police, I wonder what will be your initial reaction, and if there are concerns you're raising, because we're going to see pockets of drafts, proposals here and there, and we'll make sense of all of these proposals to aggregate exactly what will work for the Nigerian people. If you were to be in some of these rooms, what would you like to see, and what are your concerns?
Thank you for having me. Principally, I think the time, I do believe, has come for we to holistically look at this issue of state police. States have their peculiar crimes, and I think state police is a concept that we must embrace, considering security challenges that are now becoming too difficult for the federal to manage. And states at this stage need to take ownership of their police force to determine how to run their police force. You will agree with me that currently the police force in Nigeria is not just underfunded, but the staff ratio is not commensurate to the population of the country. Currently, we have about 300 and something thousand policemen to a population of 200 million people. And when you spread this figure to the 36 states and the federal capital, you find out that states are under-policed. I think with the issue of state policing, states should be able to own their police force, determine what kind of police force they will run in their various states. So I think it's a good thing that this issue has come up, and we hope that states that have not yet submitted their proposal should do so to be able to allow legislation for the establishment of the police force.
Ms. Abe, I was asking whether there are things that you're concerned over that you may want to be considered now that it's early, because as you know, when it comes to legislation, this draft comes up and then it's submitted as a bill, and then we go through all the rounds. If it's approved by all of the assemblies, and then we finally get a working document. So going through that round, if there are mistakes that have been issued from the very beginning that were not spotted, this is a good time, which is why we have public hearing. So I would like to hear some of your own concerns, because we know sometimes that even the police authorities themselves, like the IGPs, sometimes really are not very comfortable with the issue of state police, and they have their reasons.
Yes, the concern by the people, and honestly, I share that concern too. The issue of the relationship between the police force and the state, how the state is going to manage its police force, because at this stage you find out that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. And we have, the fear is that some state governors or governments might mismanage their police force, and this concern should be addressed through legislation during the drafting of the laws for establishment of the police force. We should holistically ensure that police force in these states are insulated against unnecessary interference by the state. As soon as this is done, I think we are good to go.
Let me bring it to the studio now and follow up on Jeffrey's question, perhaps, and hopefully putting it in proper context. Today's the deadline, and we're hoping that the other remaining 4 states and the FCT will submit their own state police input. But what do we expect as the federal government continues this process of restructuring? Are we going to see the federal government shedding weight financially and, deploying more funds to states to manage the state security structure, or are we going to see increased recruitment at the state level, to firm up, the capacity of the state security institution? I'm bringing it to you now, Mr. Osagie. What specifically do you hope to see in the state policing input that the states have submitted to the federal government?
Thank you. Fantastic question. But let me be kind to history. You see, we just think, most people think that state policing will come and eliminate the state of insecurity, or, mitigate, or perhaps put Nigeria in a state of peace. But before, pre-colonial, we've been practicing community and state policing. And during colonial period, we were also practicing state policing and regional policing. So, during 1960 school, the regional policing system was abolished because of the political instability. So, let's see state policing as something that we've practiced before, both state policing and regional policing. Presently, for me, I strongly believe that state policing is going to help us a lot, but we have to weigh in the advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages of state policing is the response mechanism. It's also going to give our policing system cultural, awareness and, relationship with the people. Response mechanism in the sense that when it comes to crime prevention, we have the reactionary mechanism, we have the response mechanism, we have the preventive mechanism as well. The reason why these mechanisms are put in place is if the security architecture or the security design fails, then response measures shouldn't fail. So one of the advantages of state policing is the response measures, as I've said. But the disadvantage there as well, we have to also look at the disadvantage. Before we start looking at the positive impact, we'll start looking at political abuse of our state policing, or suppression of opponents. If it is going to be under the command of most of these governors, we'll see what plays out during election while we are practicing this centralized policing system. Then when we go back to state policing system, then I think the model and the design should be well scrutinized so that our governors and state leaders do not abuse as such. Then financial wise, one of the disadvantages as well, the governor of each state has to, cater for the policing of their people. That's also going to be one of the disadvantages for state policing, except the federal government want to wage in, which I will advise they should do. But for me, if we want to have state policing, we should regionalize it. For example, Southwest, we have state policing, then regional IGP. Go to the North, we have regional IGP. Then we have the National Inspector General of Police. That alone is going to assist in the area of crime prevention, because in all honesty, the time is right now.
So we're expecting that the federal government will shed those weights of, overseeing the police institution to regions, or maybe to state governors.
Yeah. I expect them, because let's not just make it state policing. We have to regionalize it, maybe Southwest region. Like pre-colonial, we have the region, it's been regionalized. It was regionalized during the colonial era, before it was being abolished in 1966 due to a consistent military coup. So I would strongly advise that they should bring the model. Let's say the model, let's say the template. Let's look at the legal structure of the state policing. Let's look at the administrative structure of the state policing, and let's look at the operational structure as well. If we have this structure in place, then we'll be confident to say, okay, the state governors, they are capable, or they'll be capable to, manage state policing without suppressing their opponents and without using it for political gain.
So I want us to be kind to Nigerians, right?
Exactly.
This is not the first time we've approached this matter.
Okay.
In fact, some have said this will not be the last time, but let's stay hopeful on this. And my question is quite simple. What is different this time around? We saw this during the Buhari regime, or the Buhari government. Let me use that one, because it's under democracy. And it fell through. In fact, the president himself, in an exclusive interview with Channels Television, said he wasn't a fan of state police. And we saw how states eventually voted on it, how it just fell through in the whole, constitution review process. So my question is, what is different this time around? It will still go to those states that will eventually, in fact, don't let me skip ahead. Let's imagine it is even put in this whole constitution review process before it then goes to states to vote on it. What is different? Is there anything you see that is materially different that we should say, okay, let us look in the direction of the state police and expect something? Or just focus our energy, because we don't really have a lot of energy and the luxury of it in Nigeria. So let's focus our energy on something else that we know will work. That's my question to you, Mr. Serge.
Well, if you ask me what's most important, is accountability. And I talked about response earlier on, because sometimes when an incident transpired, maybe for example in Lagos State, for example, the State Commissioner of Police perhaps want to take order from the IGP for him to respond to such incident, or for him to take such order. In all honesty, to crime prevention, time and speed is very important when it comes to crime prevention. Each time you delay, it's going to cause damage.
So you think something is different this time around?
Yeah, it's going to be different.
Just a second. I want to bring in Mr. Agule Abe, because, of course, this is his own primary constituency. So, Mr. Abe, do you see anything different materially? I made that point earlier on. We don't have a lot of energy and resources to expend. We spent a lot of money the last time. So do you think anything is different materially that will push the needle in terms of state police this time around?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that will make a difference. Let's look at when incidents occur in states and we begin to wait to take orders from the federal, from the center. The state takes immediate action and gives directives for the police to wade into these issues. So we now have a narrowed time of response. And then secondly, you find out that the state understands its own peculiar crime, and building a police force will be done around these particular crimes in the communities. So I think a lot of difference will be made in terms of quick response to approaching security challenges. And also we'll look at the issue of funding. I normally want to believe that the states, out of the book, there's already state policing in Nigeria, because I was a commissioner of police, and I know that the state plays more role in funding the police than the federal. And it does happen right now. I'm in Taraba State, and I will tell you that His Excellency, the Governor of Taraba State, Dr. Abu Kefas, contributes much in seeing that the police functions in Taraba State. And so I think when the police now becomes the property of the state, I think we will see a robust policing system in the state. I think when these laws come into play, I think there will be a lot of differences compared to what it is now.
All right, Mr. Abe, I'm going to bring this question to you in the studio as well. But let me start with Mr. Abe. There is the ideal and there is the reality. So let's work with the reality. In government today and even in the past, we have governors who are megalomaniacs, of excessive love for power. One of the times we used to test how effective our institutions are, whether it's INEC, police, military, all of that, is during election. And for many times we've seen some of these institutions fall flat and just leave a bad taste on our lips, on our mouth. In fact, destroying the hard work of the good ones amongst them. So I think it will be being clever by half for us not to think that these governors are not going to use it for oppressive and all kinds of reasons. So what the conversation should be now is, how do we strengthen the institution like the police, the individuals that will run this police, who are already policemen now, who will be added to the force, so that they will serve the Nigerian people, not the governors. Because the average Nigerian public servant, really, if you want to scrutinize us properly, really doesn't see that they are serving the states. Most times, it looks like they are serving the individual, and it's something that has to be corrected. So if you were to put out a panacea to strengthen the police force such that if this doesn't fall through and it eventually comes to be, we will have formidable police within the state level that will serve the people and not the governors, because we can guarantee that these governors, some of them will abuse it. So let's not even kid ourselves.
Thank you. Institutions are weak because the laws are weak. When we make institutions weak through the laws, we will not get results. I believe that if the state police comes to be, one of the principal and primary things we need to see is the force in the law that guides this police force. The police force must be insulated against interference by some of the actors who are likely to influence the police force. As soon as the police is insulated against this thing through legislation, I think the police officers themselves will now understand the role and their responsibility to the people. Because the police force is supposed and is meant for the people, not for individuals. And when we have laws that are strong and firm enough to protect and insulate them, I think they'll be able to function properly. One of the problems we have is the laws. If you look at even the police laws guiding the police force, it's not strong enough to insulate individual police officers from incidences. So we find out that when we make laws that are strong, the police force will function properly. The police should be above individuals. The police should be able to exercise its functions and responsibility in accordance with the law. But now there's constant interference with these functions because we have weak laws that are not meant to serve the interests of the people. I think the draft in the new law, if it comes to be of the state police, they should consider this issue of insulating the police from interference with the state. And if that is done, we find out that officers will be able to discharge your responsibility efficiently and effectively well. But in the current situation as we have now, it's very, very difficult.
All right, Mr.
But
Sabe.
I think...
Sorry, Mr. Abe. Mr. Saji, your response to that?
Well, sometimes I think our politicians are predictable, and that is the truth. Plain view doctrine proves that most times they abuse our policing system, because of the attachment from the police authority. For me, I think I would strongly advise that even if we're going to have state policing, first of all, what the government should start looking at is to withdraw all police officers from our political leaders. We have a lot of manpower in the area of private security, and federal government has failed to tap into the area of private security companies in Nigeria that are licensed to protect properties, lives and properties, even though they're not carrying arms. I would also strongly advise that if we want to go into state policing, we should be looking at the area of private security as well, whereby companies that are licensed or that were licensed to provide security services are given the autonomy to carry arms and protect some people in some given areas. And if you mess up your license, can be withdrawn from you. That is going to be another deterrence measure to checkmate excessive abuse of power. But as it is, yes, state policing is the way, but we need to understand what the threat is. Because in the words of Sarah Pierce, it says, the absence of crime, best proof the effectiveness of policing. Do we have absence of crime? But if you look at the crime rate in Nigeria, let's give it to the police. They are doing a very good job because most of the threat bedeviling in Nigeria is from the borderline areas, terrorism, the banditry, and if we must curtail that, no matter the number of state policing you're going to put in place, if our borders are not well protected, it's going to be a fruitless effort because the porosity of our national borders is also contributing to in the areas of insecurity. And we cannot establish state policing without protecting our national borders. A borderless nation is a no nation, and that is what we should start looking at from my own perspective.
Nigerians may want to take you up on the performance of the police in the area of crime fighting there, but that's another conversation for another day. Let's look at the different possibilities now. Just in case the federal government says, look, we're not shedding funding, we're going to retain the police force structure at the federal level, but states bring in your component. And if we were to test what we have seen in the past few years in terms of, the state police structure without the national legislative backing, the Amoteco in the Southwest, which has not been as democratic as possible. When I say democratic now, seeing it effective in every area of the Southwest. We've seen the not so remarkable performance of Ebubeagwu or the Eastern Security Network. Can we be optimistic that state governors have the capacity to manage state police if the federal government were to give them the leeway, to put in place their structure by themselves?
Fantastic question. There's a clear difference between management and abuse. There's possibility they have the capability to manage the state policing, and also there's possibility for them to abuse that state policing. Now, if the government feels that they are not going to, sponsor or provide funds or support the state governors in the area of policing their states, I think there's going to be conflict of interest between the state policing and federal policing system, because there's going to be dual policing system in every state, the federal policing and the state policing. And we've seen it in some countries that practice policing whereby, boundary areas of jurisdiction is going to be a big fight between the state policing and the federal policing system, because they will also it's also going to cause some communal clashes as well. If, for example, now state policing system are to protect Edo State, for example, then the next state after Edo State, Kogi State have issues or boundary issues, then there's going to be conflict of interest. That's where the federal policing system will wage in. But for us, let's start looking at the possibility of securing our country and making Nigeria great again. If we want to make Nigeria great again, we need to also tell ourselves the truth that our leaders are not doing the right thing. Our leaders have failed us. We've been brutalized for so long. And I think if everyone go back to the drawing board and ensure that they serve Nigeria with integrity, like Singapore, for example, when they filed a divorce with Malaysia had thought that Singapore would not succeed. But Singapore succeeded in the area of meritocracy, pragmatism, and honesty. And that is where they are today. So we need leaders that has the merit, that are pragmatic and also honest.
Well, Mr. Dixon Osaje, Managing Director, Deep Breeze Protection Services, Security Analysts. You were in the military as well.
Thank you.
So thank you for bringing to bear all of that experience, as well as retired Commissioner of Police Agiole Abe, former Commissioner of Police Kaduna State, former Commander Police Mobile Force Owerri Imo Kaduna State, former Commandant Police Mobile Training College Ilarogun Osun State. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return our attention to sports. What a weekend it was for Nigeria across sports. Paralympians, the Super Eagles. We'll talk about those highlights and look into the future. Cecilia joins us. Do stay with us.